For years, I had been a model resident, paid my dues on time, kept my lawn trimmed, followed every HOA rule, even the ridiculous ones. I never caused trouble, never made waves. But in this neighborhood, that didn't matter, because when you live under a power-hungry HOA, all it takes is one small mistake for your entire life to spiral out of control.
Welcome to Karen Chronicles. Before we begin, please like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue creating even better content. Thank you so much. All right, let's get started.
And for me, it all started with a simple $55 fine. Welcome to the neighborhood where HOA runs everything. Our neighborhood looked perfect from the outside, manicured lawns, identical fences, freshly paved streets, the kind of place that made you think, wow, this is a great place to live. But there was a dark side. HOA wasn't just a community organization, it was a dictatorship. And at the center of it, Karen. Meet Karen, the HOA enforcer. Every neighborhood has a Karen, but ours, she was on another level. She wasn't just a member of the HOA, she controlled it, and she lived for enforcing the rules. Too many holiday decorations? Fine. Trash cans out an hour late? Fine. Wrong shade of beige on your shutters? Fine. Karen didn't just enforce rules, she created them, and if you questioned her, she made your life hell. But I never had an issue with her, until one day I did. The $55 fine that changed everything. It was a regular Tuesday when I got the letter, a bright yellow HOA violation notice taped aggressively to my front door. Failure to pay results in additional penalties. I frowned. I had never missed a payment. Then I saw the fine, $55. Apparently I'd left my trash bin out too long one morning, a violation I didn't even realize existed. Okay, annoying but no big deal, I thought. I grabbed my checkbook, ready to pay and move on with my life. But when I logged into my HOA account, the fine was now $500, and I had 1 week to pay or face legal action. My stomach dropped. Was this a mistake, or was Karen playing a different game, a fine or a setup? I called the HOA office, expecting a simple clarification. There must be a mistake, I said. I just got the notice today. How is it already $500? The woman on the phone sighed. Sir, the fine accumulates daily penalties if not paid immediately. Daily penalties? But I just received the notice today. That's something you'll need to discuss with the board. The board, which meant Karen. At that moment, a cold realization hit me. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. And if I didn't figure out what was really going on, I could lose everything. It started with a simple fine, $55 for leaving my trash bin out too long. Annoying, yes. Unfair, probably. But worth fighting over? Not really. Or so I thought, until the second letter arrived. A foreclosure notice, shock, confusion, and a growing rage. Notice of lien and foreclosure action. I stared at the letter in disbelief. HOA was moving to seize my house over a $55 fine. I read it again and again, but the words didn't change. Total balance due, $3,645. Failure to pay will result in legal foreclosure proceedings. This has to be a mistake. I had paid my HOA fees on time, followed the rules mostly, and never caused trouble. How does $55 turn into thousands of dollars? I felt my pulse rise, shock, confusion, then pure anger. Someone was behind this, and I had a good idea who. The hand of Karen had been on a mission to control this neighborhood for years. She'd fined neighbors for mailbox designs, forced people to repaint fences, even tried to ban kids from playing in the cul-de-sac. She thrived on finding ways to punish people, and now I was her next target. I replayed my last few encounters with her, the way she had been casually mentioning HOA rules whenever I saw her, the smug looks whenever she dropped another warning letter at someone's door. Her obsession with making sure everyone followed the rules. This wasn't just about a fine, this was Karen playing judge, jury, and executioner. A dangerous precedent. I did what any rational person would do. I called the HOA office. "This is a mistake," I told the rep. "I only got one violation notice, and now you're foreclosing on my house." The woman on the other end sounded bored, like she had heard this all before. "Sir, your fine accumulated late fees, administrative charges, and legal processing costs." Late fees, administrative charges, but I was never notified. According to our records, all notifications were sent. Sent where? To the void. "You have 30 days to pay in full or HOA will proceed with foreclosure." Over 55s? The balance is now 3,645s. I was furious. This wasn't about a fine anymore. This was a scam, a setup, and I wasn't going to let them take my home without a fight. The more I thought about it, the more something felt off. How could a $55 fine turn into the threat of losing my home? I had lived here for years, always following the rules, always paying my dues. And now, suddenly, my house was at risk over a garbage bin violation? No, something wasn't right. If HOA thought I was just going to roll over and accept this, they were dead wrong. It was time to fight back, and the first step? Figuring out if the HOA even had the power to do this. Researching the law, I spent the next several hours deep diving into HOA laws, property rights, and foreclosure regulations. I pulled up the HOA's official bylaws and policies, state laws about homeowner rights, court cases where HOAs had wrongfully foreclosed on homeowners, and what I found, HOA had no legal grounds to take my home over a $55 fine. Here's why. HOA can only foreclose for unpaid dues, like HOA membership fees or special assessments, not minor fines. Even if I refused to pay, they'd have to take me to court first, and no judge would rule in their favor for such a petty violation. There were laws protecting homeowners from predatory HOA actions, and what they were trying to do to me. It screamed illegal, so why were they trying to pull this off? That's when I realized this wasn't about me. This was bigger. Gathering evidence, I wasn't about to fight this battle unarmed. I started documenting everything. I saved every letter, email, and notice from the HOA. I double-checked all my payments to see if there were any errors they could be exploiting. I wrote down dates, times, and details of every interaction with Karen, and then I started talking to my neighbors, uncovering the HOA's dark history. At first, people were hesitant. Nobody wanted to be on Karen's bad side. "She has a way of making life difficult," one neighbor admitted. But the more I pushed, the more people opened up, and what I found was worse than I imagined. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was manipulating the HOA for her own benefit. She had issued excessive fines to multiple homeowners over the years. Some people had been forced to sell their homes because of violations that were completely fabricated. There were cases where HOA mysteriously took control of vacant houses and later sold them for profit. One neighbor, Alex, had lived here for over a decade. "This isn't the first time they've done this," he said grimly. "People have lost their homes before, and Karen was always involved." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about a garbage bin fine. This was a business, HOA was, using obscure rules, piling on fines, and forcing people into impossible financial traps, all so they could take over properties and resell them. And Karen, she was at the center of it all. The plot thickens. This wasn't just about me anymore. If I let them get away with this, I wouldn't be the last victim. It was time to go from defense to offense, because now I had a mission. Expose the HOA, take down Karen, and make sure no one else in this neighborhood lost their home to this scam. This wasn't just a fight for my house anymore. It was a war against corruption. And I was just getting started. I'd been fighting this battle alone. For days, I'd been digging through legal documents, gathering evidence and uncovering Karen's manipulations. But I was no lawyer. And then I remembered, my father was a family of fighters. My dad wasn't just any lawyer. He was a veteran in real estate and property law, a man who had spent decades fighting against unfair evictions, shady contracts, and corrupt organizations. If there was anyone who could help me tear Karen and the HOA apart, it was him. So I called him. "Dad, I need your help." I explained everything: the $55 fine, the inflated penalties, the foreclosure threats, and most importantly, the corrupt system that had been preying on homeowners for years. There was a long silence. Then, in the calm but deadly serious voice I had heard many times before, he said, "They're bluffing and they're breaking the law." Building the case. The moment he got involved, everything changed. First, we examined my homeownership contract. Did I ever sign anything that allowed HOA to seize property over a minor fine? No. Nowhere in the agreement did it give them that power. Then, we pulled up state laws on HOA foreclosures. Could they even legally do this? No. Not for a fine this small. They were abusing legal loopholes. Finally, we looked at similar cases across the country. Had other homeowners fought back? Had they won? Yes. And in some cases, HOA had been forced to pay damages. "They think they can intimidate you into compliance," my father said. "But what they don't realize is they just picked a fight with the wrong family. Karen has no idea what's coming with my father leading the charge. Everything was falling into place. We weren't just defending my home anymore. We were building a lawsuit. One that could not only stop this foreclosure attempt, but potentially bring down Karen's entire operation. Karen thought she had power, but now she was about to find out what real power looked like. Karen was many things: controlling, manipulative, power-hungry, but she wasn't stupid. She knew something had changed. I wasn't just a homeowner fighting an unfair fine anymore. I was coming for her. And when Karen realized that, she did what she always did. She fought dirty Karen's smear campaign. Within days, I started noticing a shift in how my neighbors looked at me. People whispered as I walked by. A few suddenly stopped talking to me altogether. And then I found out why. Karen was spreading lies. He's trying to destroy the HOA. He's stirring up trouble just to get attention. He doesn't care about the community. He just wants to sue us for money. The worst part, some people actually believed her. Even though they had been victims of her ridiculous rules, they feared going against her, because Karen had ruled this neighborhood with intimidation for years. And now, she was using that same fear against me, but I wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. HOA tries to legalize the scam. As Karen spread lies, the HOA doubled down. I received a new letter, this time from the HOA's legal team. They claimed that the foreclosure was completely legal and justified. That by living in this neighborhood, I had agreed to all HOA penalties and consequences. That failure to comply would result in my home being seized. It was designed to scare me. It was designed to make me quit. But what they didn't know? I had a lawyer in my corner now, and that letter, it was filled with loopholes and legal misinterpretations. "They're bluffing," my father assured me, "and we're going to prove it. The counterattack begins." I wasn't just going to sit back and defend myself. It was time to fight back. I started recording everything. One day, I confronted Karen, casually bringing up the situation. She took the bait. She went on a rant about how people like me needed to be kept in line. She admitted on recording that she had personally convinced the HOA to target me. "This neighborhood doesn't need troublemakers," she spat. "People who fight back end up regretting it." Threat. Recorded. I took the fight to the media. I reached out to a local journalist who had been covering corrupt HOA practices in the area. When he heard my story, he was hooked. "HOA foreclosing over a $55 fine? Yeah, People need to hear about this. Neighbors started coming forward. I wasn't the only one Karen had bullied. More and more homeowners began speaking up, sharing their own horror stories. Karen's web of lies was unraveling, HOA on the defensive. At first, Karen and the HOA tried to ignore the growing backlash, but once a local news station picked up the story, they had no choice. Suddenly the HOA wasn't in control anymore. They were the ones being investigated. Karen had ruled this neighborhood like a queen, but now the kingdom was collapsing around her, and she knew it. This was it. The moment where everything Karen and the HOA had done would finally be dragged into the light. For years, Karen had ruled through fear, intimidation, and manipulation. But tonight, she was about to learn what happens when you push the wrong person too far. The meeting begins. The HOA meeting room was packed. Dozens of homeowners had shown up, some curious, some nervous, and some outright angry. Karen sat at the head of the table, flanked by the other board members, looking as smug as ever. She thought she had already won. "Let's begin," she said, trying to keep control of the room. I stood up. "Actually, before we proceed, I have some evidence to present." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Evidence?" she scoffed. "This is a standard HOA discussion. There's nothing to present." She had no idea what was coming. The legal bombshell. I pulled out the first document, the original home ownership contract. "This is my contract with the HOA," I began, turning toward the room. "It clearly states that foreclosure is only possible for unpaid dues. Nowhere does it allow property seizure over minor fines." A murmur spread through the crowd. "That's correct," one of the HOA board members admitted, flipping through their own copy. Karen's face twitched. "This meeting isn't about legal technicalities," she snapped. "It's about maintaining order in our community." "Actually, it is about legality," my father said, standing up. "And right now, this HOA is violating state law." I held up the next document, HOA regulations from the state. According to state law, HOA foreclosures must follow due process, and any abuse of power can be challenged in court. That means, if you move forward with this, we have every legal right to sue the HOA for damages. That got the board's attention. Karen's jaw clenched. "This is ridiculous," she said, but now her voice was shaky. The smoking gun, the recording now, came the final blow. "If that's not enough proof," I continued, "let's talk about Karen's abuse of power." I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Karen's own voice filled the room. "People who fight back end up regretting it. We need to keep certain people in check. If I say he's a troublemaker, then that's what he is." The room went silent. Karen's face drained of color. That's taken out of context," she stammered. "Oh, really?" my father said, stepping forward. "Because to me it sounds like intentional harassment and abuse of power." "Nah." Several board members exchanged glances. Some whispered among themselves. For the first time, Karen wasn't in control. The outcome, a crushing defeat for Karen. "We need to discuss this," one board member finally said. "No!" Karen snapped. "He's manipulating all of you. He's the problem here." But the damage was done. The HOA officially retracted the foreclosure notice. The board agreed to conduct an internal investigation into Karen's actions. Several members openly questioned whether she should remain on the board at all. Karen had lost. I didn't just keep my home. I exposed the corruption that had been ruling this community for years. And Karen, her time as queen of the HOA was coming to an end. Karen was finished. The moment the HOA withdrew their foreclosure attempt, the entire neighborhood knew her power was slipping away. She had spent years controlling this community, enforcing rules she made up, bullying homeowners into submission. But the second she was exposed, everything unraveled. And now, it was time for her reckoning. Karen falls from power. The backlash was immediate. The very same neighbors Karen had manipulated, intimidated, and lied to. They turned on her. "We trusted you to manage our community, not abuse it. How many other people have you targeted like this? We deserve to know where all our money has been going." The pressure on the HOA board was overwhelming. They had ignored Karen's behavior for years, but now with public scrutiny they had no choice. Within days, Karen was officially removed from her position. An independent review of the HOA's finances was launched. Homeowners demanded a complete restructuring of how the HOA operated. Karen had built her power on fear, and now that power was gone. She was just another homeowner now, one with a lot of enemies, a win for the entire community. For me, it wasn't just about keeping my home, it was about making sure this never happened to anyone else again. The HOA was now required to make all financial records public. Unjust penalty policies were re-evaluated and revoked. A new rule was implemented. HOA board members could be removed if they were found abusing their power. No more secret fines, no more unchecked authority, no more Karen. For the first time in years, people felt safe in their own neighborhood, and that was the real victory. Lessons learned. Power to the people. This wasn't just my fight. It was a lesson for every homeowner in every HOA-controlled community. But HOA rules are not above the law. They act like they have absolute power, but they don't. Laws exist to protect homeowners. Know your rights. 2. Fear is their strongest weapon, but knowledge is stronger. Karen thrived on intimidation. The moment I fought back with facts, she crumbled. 3. One person can make a difference. I was just one homeowner, but by standing up, I exposed an entire system of corruption. If HOA overreach is left unchecked, they will take advantage of it. But when people fight back, change happens, and Karen, she learned that the hard way, the perfect ending. I kept my home. Karen lost her power. The community took control of its own rules. And most importantly, HOA will think twice before trying to pull something like this again. Because now, everyone in this neighborhood knows their rights, and no one, not Karen, not anyone else, would ever take that away again. At its heart, this story isn't just about a homeowner fighting back against an unfair fine. It's about the power of knowledge, resilience, and community action. For many people, especially older adults who have spent decades in their homes, HOAs can feel like an untouchable authority, one that can dictate how you live, what you do with your property, and even whether or not you get to keep your home. But the truth is, HOAs are not above the law, and homeowners are not powerless. Here are some of the most important lessons from this battle. 1. Fear only works when people stay silent. Many people in the community knew Karen was a problem for years, but they did nothing out of fear. She thrived on intimidation, and as long as people accepted it, she had total control. But the second someone stood up to her, her power crumbled. 2. Understanding your rights is the strongest weapon. Karen and the HOA relied on people not knowing the rules. But once someone took the time to read the contracts, research the laws, and seek legal counsel, the truth became clear. They were abusing power, not enforcing it. Knowledge turned the tables. 3. One person can make a difference. The homeowner in this story was just one individual. He wasn't a lawyer, a politician, or a leader, just an everyday resident. But by standing up, gathering evidence, and refusing to be bullied, he didn't just save his own home, he changed how the HOA operated for everyone. 4. Corrupt systems fall when people unite. At first, the community was divided. Some sided with Karen out of fear, while others stayed quiet. But once the truth was exposed, people started coming together. Their collective voices held the HOA accountable, forcing them to be transparent and fair. And that's the biggest takeaway. You are not powerless against unfair authority. If something is wrong, you have the right to fight back. And sometimes all it takes is one person to inspire an entire community to stand up for what's right.